Well, I'm excited today. This is going to be a fun one. Andy is always on the Monday, Tuesday recaps. We're talking the UFL, gameplay and the results from the week and attendance and all that stuff. But we're doing a deep dive today. We have some comments coming out from Daryl Johnston talking about next season. Andy's passionate about getting this marketing kind of plan, survival guide together here for UFL season 2. We're going to do all that today. I'll preview everything else. But first, Andy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Reed. I love that we get to double dip this week. I really do. And I guess we're going to do it next week, too, with CFL as well. But this is fantastic. I've been giddy to talk about this.
Yeah, so this will be good. So to set the stage today, we have Ryan Ballantine coming on here after this, where we're talking CFL, a lot of preseason, offseason notes from Ryan. He's with 3 Down Nation. We do have friends over there. He's doing the Calgary Stampeders beat for all of them. Very appreciate Ryan spending, I think, 25 minutes coming on the show. At the end of the program, I've already tabulated and done the results for our 3,500 subscriber giveaway. Check that out. The Jordan Ta'amu jersey, Brandon Silvers, Kevontae Turpin, PJ Walker, and then the UFL championship ticket. So all the winners have been announced. Check at the end of the episode. If you want to be part of the next giveaway we have here, I think 4,000 subscribers, 2 season ticket, the season ticket pack to the UFL next season. So that's a lot of work we got to get to here before UFL 2025. So like and subscribe, share the video. It doesn't cost you a penny. If you appreciate the work we do, you can hit join, be a member for all that. But a lot of work goes into this. I was thinking, Andy, I could just go download some UFL games and upload them. I don't understand why we're sitting here putting this work in, but Andy is putting together a plan today. We're going to save all of this stuff. Have I pressed everything? Have I gotten everything out of the way?
You always do a stand-up job, Reed.
Okay, well, anyway, so like and subscribe. Like I said, get us up to 4,000. A lot of work for all this stuff. So news and notes before we get into everything today. Like I said, Daryl Johnston is kind of carrying his comments, kind of carrying the torch today with what we're going to talk about. But UFL showcases have officially been announced. So we're really kind of feeling like, okay, we can talk about season 2 of the UFL. We can talk about 2025. We've got showcases. Moose is talking about all of that stuff. Locations here, I don't read too much into it, right? We have the Washington, D.C., St. Louis, Houston, Atlanta, Orlando. I did a tweet today. I said, put a team in San Diego, cowards. You're doing the showcase there. I understand they don't want to pay any of that stuff. Like I said, I wouldn't read into this as any these are expansion cities. But any thoughts on this? And then we have a couple specialist showcases coming up as well.
I mean, the San Diego showcase is nothing new. The only question is it just a specialist showcase or is it an all-encompassing showcase? Because that's been the case the last 2 years. Nick Novak, former kicker in the NFL, noted Chargers kicker, obviously spent a lot of time in San Diego, has been running the specialist showcase the last 2 years in October. So the question there is it the specialist, just the specialists, or is it going to also be and all-encompassing, all kinds of players, all kinds of different personnel at that location? So it's not
looks like we're getting 2. It looks like so the Novak one will be October 19th, and then it looks like then we get a full-fledged one on the 20th. So we'll probably fly, we'll get Danny or whatever in there. We'll get Dwayne. We'll do some media stuff. But that could be a fun weekend. If you want to go check that stuff out here end of October in San Diego, that could be fun.
I think I'm going to make a point to go to it since that is in my backyard. And I didn't go to the specialist showcases the last 2 years. I got notes from them, but I didn't actually get to attend them. I had other things going on. But this time, I think I might make it a point to go out to this location. The Orlando one, that's interesting, but I can understand them wanting to hit the Florida market. I understand them wanting to get that Southern demographic, and especially in that area, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I think the locations are great, honestly, regardless of whether there's teams in those cities or not.
Well, yeah, and that's, we had the Hawaii showcase before. That was a lot of publicity with that. And obviously, The Rock lives out there in his offseason. We're putting a team there. But I think it's good to read into this. The San Diego, they usually do the Arizona as kind of the West Coast one. So I like they're at least getting into California for that in case it's easier to travel north-south, I guess, and to fly to Arizona. But I think combining that with the Nick Novak showcase, I think is probably was the selling point for that of let's get everybody in here and then we can do 2 days. I've heard mixed messages about some of the specialists getting to be able to showcase at the non-specialist showcases. Like, okay, well, they're the last thing to go. People are already tired. It's at the end of the day. So I like this. We're splitting it up and let them kind of be able to do that as well. But this is good. I mean, like, I don't think 2025 was super in question. Mike has always said, like, I feel like we get kind of this half season to build up and then next year. But does it make you feel better knowing that we're kind of heading into this now? It feels like the league is short from saying like we're coming back official, like we're coming back, it's official.
Well, there's just not the cloud of unknowing that there was last year, right, with the merger. And I mean, it's not even that people were talking about that necessarily this time last year. A calendar year ago, it was status quo. People thought there was going to be a second XFL season and a third USFL season. And instead, what we got was completely different. But that tornado had not hit for quite a while. So for me, I mean, look, things could always change, but I do believe that I believe what Mike said is that there's the intention to have that second season. And so for me, it is more security, obviously, knowing that there's actual calendared events, but I don't think we're going to have the sudden heel turn that we did last year.
Well, and also like, the XFL had other drafts planned for this fall. And then those kind of got rolled into the dispersal draft and like the supplemental dispersal draft. And like, I mean, this is different. We have a date on the calendar. We're holding somewhere to do this. I mean, there's another, because you have to look at like, there's various different steps of like, getting married to someone is the highest step. And then there's like, okay, well, we're engaged. Okay, well, then we're dating. Okay, well, like we're going, like there's, there's not all, putting, a calendaring and a potential XFL, follow-up draft to the training camp or to their showcases is a little different than like booking a venue somewhere. So at least I feel better about that we kind of got that going. The other quick news, I thought this was great. Stumbled upon Anthony Miller. Bob Stoops had his final media call of the season because obviously the Renegades aren't going to be in the playoffs. There was a question here about his future. Question whether he'll return next year. We've talked a lot about this with with the XFL coaches, with the pay structure. Are they returning? With the markets here presumably staying intact, which is part of what we're going to talk about with Daryl Johnston today. Bob Stoops says, right now I know, but who knows what it's going to look like. Our contracts go through the end of June. After that, we'll have to see if it's looking like for the following year. I hope to, but you never know what the whole structure is going to look like. If it works and fits my life, then yes. If it doesn't work, then maybe we'll see. I don't read that as super positive, but you go for it.
It's not the most positive message, and I understand where Stoops is coming from. You walked into the XFL with a preconceived notion of how much money you were going to get, and we knew that the pay structure between the USFL and the XFL was markedly different. That had been reported as such. Now, with the leagues merging and now supposedly going the other way, where money may not be as free-flowing for some of these coaches, hence what's going to happen with some of these XFL teams because they were grandfathered into their contracts this past year, and that won't be the case next year. I understand the apprehension to potentially come back if the money's not there, because quite frankly, it should be. Their services should be paid for. And these are stalwart coaches who really don't even really owe themselves to be in this league. They love coaching. That's why they're in it. But like, they don't owe anything to this league, and they neither should they. It's fantastic that there's an individual like Wade Phillips coaching the San Antonio Brahmas. It's fantastic that there's a legend like Bob Stoops in this league. That's amazing. But it's by no means is it guaranteed, and it shouldn't be guaranteed. Like I said, I've said this numerous times during the season. I almost can't believe that Skip Holtz is still around, considering what he's done the last 2 years. He absolutely should be in a college somewhere, at a D1 college, making considerable amounts of money coaching a D1 program. And who knows? Maybe he looks to that next year. If this Birmingham team, regardless if they three-peat or not, I think he looks to that. So the money situation is absolutely valid, and Stoops has every right to feel that way. I think, if anything, I do feel like this league should try to keep him around in some capacity, maybe keep him as a consultant for league business in an administrative role, perhaps. I think they need to consider another way to keep him in the fold. But if they're not going to pay him as a coach, then why should he continue in that role?
Yeah, so I think, and to round this into our conversation today, I think the Arlington Renegades will continue next year based on Moose's comments we'll get to right now. But whether Stoops is there or not, I think far relates more to kind of the pay structure or what they're going to do with that. So here we go, kind of meat and potatoes today. I'll make a keynote, or I'll make a time code here. We'll get to all this stuff. Andy has put together a survival guide today. We know, according to Moose Johnston, EVP of Football Ops for the UFL, the 8 teams are planned to return next year, barring any. And again, a plan today could be changed tomorrow by something happening. Plans for the 8 to return. I believe they're currently deciding, like, as we speak, are we doing any expansion? We've done our relocation talk in the past, but I think Moose understands and I'll pull up the quote here. I think Moose understands the importance of kind of saving face, and like, we are in these markets a couple times. So I got Mark's on here. Anthony had his, but there was more. I think the quote was longer on Mark's one here, kind of just summarizing all of this. This was the interview that Moose did, I think, with the Michigan market going into all this Action 5 News, in Memphis going into kind of the end of the season. Basically them blaming the UFL for their own kind of attendance woes this year. I think the responsibility on our side was not getting the merger done as quickly as we had hoped. That was the delay and all of this stuff, and we're going to get into today. How do they kind of remedy that going into next year? But in terms of if there's going to be changes to the markets, I do not see any changes in the markets. There was talk, an ongoing talk still about expansion. We're going to have a decision on that soon. That would be the only thing that would have changed. It would be great for us, in a lot of people's opinions, to be able to stay status quo and get our feet underneath us and have a really strong season 2. So we kind of have here now, this is from, and I'll get Andy's comments on this and we'll roll into the guide. Like, they understand their attendance issues are kind of self-imposed. I would hope partially because of the lack of marketing they've done. And then also, which relates to that, kind of the shortened, truncated runway leading into this, but then also at least operating under the fact that we'll be in these same markets again next year. I don't know. Are you 50-50 expansion? But Andy, let's get your thoughts on this, and then we'll get into all your other stuff.
Well, based on those comments and based on his tone in those words, I would say he's considering staying pat as far as keeping the same teams, but more so not really over budgeting and continuing to just sort of keep expenses as they are, which in my opinion, as we'll get into later, I don't think is really much of an option if he wants growth. And so the status quo line is a bit concerning, because I think status quo is not the way that this league should be looking at going forward. I'm not necessarily saying that they have to expand, which I will also get into later, but they have to put more effort into what's being done right now. And I know that he keeps saying we'll have a strong season 2. I'm sure he felt the same way about the USFL having a strong season 2, and clearly nothing really changed, especially those ratings. The ratings were potentially even worse than they were in the first year. So I don't think that that's something that he can really let rest his laurels on, and neither should he, and neither should this league. There's a lot of work to be done here. So for me, it's not encouraging in terms of people who are always advocating for expansion, those people out there, but more so, I don't know if it really spells any sort of semblance of idea of growth, or any idea of there being button pushing or any sort of risk taking going into the season 2, which again, I argue needs to be done.
One last comment here, and then I have a comment, or one last quote, and then I have a comment, and then we'll get into it. Andy's got a PowerPoint and everything. Very excited for all this. He says here, and this is, I've been thinking about this even while you've been talking. He's talking about, performance moving forward. I think one of the most important things for us with the USFL was, as quickly as we came together and made it through season 2, we all knew that there was a lot where we could be better. I think in season 2, I'd love to see the opportunity. Basically, like, the fact that by having a season 1 and then rolling into a season 2, like, that felt like we had the momentum there. And what my comments would be to Moose or anybody that would listen to this, the US, like, the ownership here, leadership still thinks that just existing in the space is going to be enough. And we, like, to put yourself in the zeitgeist we were when the USFL came out, it was in the weirdest time where the XFL had got pulled from everybody. They were excited about that. COVID, everyone had sat around for 2 years or a year and a half when they kind of announced this stuff. And then it's like, we're doing, here's the USFL uniforms. The Doug Flutie's talking. We're coming back. I mean, Stefan and Zach's USFL stream draft was like 30,000 views. Like, there was just such a weird influx about all that. And I think they got so high on that supply of, like, man, this is really, really exciting stuff. And then, like, going into season 2, I thought it was like, well, hey, this will just be better because, and it wasn't. And I think they realized that. Obviously, we got into all this merger stuff, but like, I think they got a self-inflated idea of like what this actually was, but it was never really sustainable because it was just this weird, you know what I'm saying? It was this weird confluence of everything. And then when the XFL came, that didn't get it. And then when the XFL, then when they merge here, and like, I know ratings have been good this year, but it's all kind of, I mean, the only reason they've even gone up this year is because like everything's on better TV networks. Like there's been no growth of any kind of anything they've done. It's just, well, we've put the same product now on a better TV network, and so it's drawing more. To me, there's nothing that they've done that's like self-improvement of like, we're doing something, we're adding a faucet to our bathroom to make it more appealing for someone else.
Well, it goes back to the dilemma we talked about when you went to that Arlington game. Yes, the product is good. Do people know that the product exists? And that's really the biggest thing. You can have the greatest products in the world. It doesn't matter if people don't know what it exists. And you need to get the message out there. And I don't think they've done a good enough job of getting it out there. And neither, in some ways, the XFL was hamstrung in that last year too. They didn't want to overspend on that. But the fact of the matter is there needs to be more done on the boots on the ground in order to get this out there. So no, just existing is not good enough. The USFL existed in a space when there was no spring football, and good for them. But then the XFL came in and it became oversaturated, and just keeping things the way they were didn't really sit well with a lot of teams. And a lot of people started to gravitate towards the XFL because they were playing in their own cities. They had individual teams. They had individual trademarks, new trademarks, I argue, which I'll get into later. But that didn't really I didn't think that really helped things in terms of their growth, in terms of there being like there was just too many teams. There's too many spring football teams. There were 16 teams sprayed across a 5-month schedule from February to July, and it was just too much. It was oversaturation. So it was really twofold of a problem. And here the USFL has to, or the UFL, I should say, but the remnants of the USFL.
Well, it feels very USFL.
The thought process needs to change a little bit in terms of that. I just don't think you can just exist. I really don't. I argue that you have to think more beyond that.
Well, and also my last comment here, the novelty's gone now. In 2022, this was very novel still, because like I said, we had it, because that's why, like, I mean, we were all clamoring over the spring league. I'm like, was that the greatest thing in the world? Like, no, but it was like, we didn't have anything. And then fan control football, we were all obsessing about that. And then it was like the USFL. And then kind of COVID ended, and people like, well, I can go to the store again. I can go watch movies, and I can go do, like, it lost that weird, like, we were all just in this bubble. So anyway, I rambled enough here. Andy's got his, look at this. We have graphics and everything here. We have our survival guide going in. You tell me when to, this is a slideshow. You tell me when to move on and preface this, but Andy's put in work. And so this is kind of avoiding the drop here next year, avoiding the lack of novelty, avoiding all of that stuff. Like, how do you maintain going into season 2 and not have a drop off that we've seen in years past?
Well, for me, it starts with a few points. So if we're going to get into the first subject here for our survival guide, I've broken it down into several sections, and I would like to go kind of point by point in each one. You can stop me at any point also, Reed, if you want to jump on in. So first of all, marketing. We just talked about that, getting the message out there. The UFL has not done that enough. Just quite frankly, has not done it enough. We don't know the teams that are in the markets that they are, besides St. Louis, are really not really pulling their weight. DC has done a good job, but clearly there's been a bit of a dip in terms of enthusiasm this season. I know part of it's, the team maybe not performing as well, but clearly there seems to be a bit of a retraction on those numbers. First thing you got to do, we talked about this, tabling and networking at local sporting events. Get your message out there. I don't care. Advertise in front of or during games in the area, basketball games, hockey games, baseball games. I don't care. Do something. Get your name out there. Tell people that you exist. The Frisco Fighters, I remember, got a message out about their games when I was at an Arlington Renegades game last year. Okay. And then I'm not going to go to game because I don't live in Arlington, but at least they're trying to tell me, like, hey, we exist. That's all I need from you. That's the first thing I really need you to do. So advertise at local games, get it out there. Just do anything you can to do that. That's like my first point.
So the Frisco Fighters are getting their word out at a UFL game. Do you think the UFL is getting their word out at the Frisco Fighters game? I would wager probably not.
we'd have to ask somebody who would go to Frisco Fighter.
But you know
games,
what I
so.
mean? Because I think
Yeah.
again, and to just to piggyback on this, like you need to understand where you are in the market. And we've talked about this before. Like, well, who do we credential and who do we not? And what do we allow? And do we do all this? That like you need to understand that you are a community-based, football sporting league at this point and act accordingly. You are not a top 5, 6 market, league in this market in terms of sports. Like the same legwork you see the CFL and the Frisco Fighters and the Savannah Bananas and all these people do, like that is more. I'm not saying you're the Savannah Bananas, but that is more what you need to do than you should be at the Frisco Fighter games as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that cross synergy needs to continue to happen, especially consider this year. I mean, they started later. So the IFL had actually, I believe, kicked off even just before the UFL had. So you have that opportunity to do that cross synergy. You really need to work on that. Going into other things, merchandise. I want to see more merchandise. I want to see shirts. I want to see stickers. I want to see decals. I want to see anything out there. I want more merchandising, period. This shop needs to be updated and facelifted. I need to see more stuff. Besides the jersey thing, I know everyone wants jerseys, but clearly they're very much do about nothing on that. They don't even want to focus on jerseys, which that's up to them.
Like they have I mean, I think the replicas are like passable now, but I would like to think that you have a hardcore, you have a more authentic option for your hardcore fans. I think that would sell almost as well as the replicas would.
I think so too. You got to get the replicas out there, and you got to. And now I know naming rights, obviously, that comes down to contracting with players, and that's a little tougher to do. But like, get any sort of replica jersey out there, just anything, like they used to do in college before NIL existed. You would just have the number, right? I mean, I would go in my college. I bought several jerseys that were the numbers of my favorite players. Of course, they couldn't put the names on them because then they would owe them royalties, and they couldn't do that. But I would do that, and if you want to do that in this league, that's fine. If that's a way of not paying players for a name likeness, that's up to you. But at least get the replica numbers out there. Get more numbers out there. That's really a big thing for me.
I've never understood this. I mean, because the XFL was going to do, or I think that the plan was back in the 2020, like you're an employee of the league, like we're going to sell the jerseys, and like by signing to play in this league, you are an employee of this league and we can sell your merchandise, and like maybe we give you a cut or whatever. But like I think that of any benefit of having a single ownership league is like, no, you play and we're going to put Teamu on the back of the jersey and sell it. And like, the top 5 sellers, maybe you get 10% of whatever, but like that's what you get for being in this league.
You would think so. I mean, I think that would just go gangbusters. Absolutely. Would I love to go to a Renegades game and buy a Perez jersey? Hell yes, I would. But guess what? That's not an option now, is it? And so, I mean, look, I'm getting a custom Adrian Martinez jersey sent to my house. Yes, did you hear that, Stallions fans? I'm getting a Martinez jersey sent to my house, courtesy of me buying it and creating it myself because I had to, because that's not an option to buy in this league. That's a felony, in my opinion, a merchandising felony. You have to be able to get better at that. You must sell your assets as much as you can.
Well, but like I said, and just being able, I think the names on it would go such a long way of people. And the whole point of these leagues is like the CFL, and you have this connection with the players. And here's this guy that's been trying to go out. Like you said, people would have a Perez jersey. I have 2 Mike Ford jerseys in the Seattle Mariners. Played half a season here last year. I brought him up. But you know what? He was a really fun guy. We watched it. Like, I don't want to have just a Mariner jersey. I want to have a Mike Ford jersey because that was kind of my guy. And like, yeah, I'm going to get whatever. But like, I never owned a Mariners jersey before then. And I'm too hardcore on it now that I got to have a couple. But like, people support the team, but people support the player far more than the team. And you want to have players that you connect with. And I think when this entire league is built around connecting with the players, because that is, it's certainly not the 99% level of talent that it is in the NFL. You're watching, like, you want the people to co-sign with these players and kind of their journeys as well. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think that goes a long way in creating that relationship with the fans. And speaking of creating that relationship, let's go into ticket base. Mm-hmm. I need a $20 ticket base for all these games, period. $10, not doing it for me anymore. You need to create value in these tickets. But can you have packages and can you have deals? Yes. In fact, you need to have more giveaways. I agree with what Tom Murkow has said a couple of weeks ago. Like, you need to have more giveaways. That just needs to be more part of this More spatulas at Memphis games. I don't care, but like give more giveaways. We need to have more items that are part of this whole package and incentivize these people to come out to these games, have entertainment ready, have showcases by players, have giveaways, everything. Just get people in there if you have to give stuff away. That's just a big thing for me. But it starts at least a decently priced value here. And then you can also have deals for families. Like if you want to have families come in and have a certain ticket base of like a certain number of like children come into the picture. That's great. Awesome. Do that. That's a really important way to get people in.
Well, and I would say also you need to have that base price always be that base price. And I think you can give things on top of that. But I will say I was someone that went to the game, whatever, it's last Saturday. I don't even know what we paid for those tickets. Like I bought them back in, February, when they went on sale. But like I saw the week of like $5 tickets, get a free hoodie, get a sweatshirt, get a hat, all this stuff. And I'm like, man, I bought this thing full price 4 months ago. Like, what the heck, right? So, I mean, I understand you're trying to get people in the seats, but then you're also like, that's alienated. And I'll tell you, not only is it the UFL that deals with that, Kraken season, larger professional sports deals with that. Kraken deal with that is a huge problem where we as season ticket holders pay, and then you can go on game time and get the thing for half price, or they're doing like you said, giveaways, whatever. So you don't want to alienate the people that you're trying to sell these season tickets to by then like, oh shoot, man, if you wait till 2 days before, we'll give you $1. We'll give you $1.75. You come in, like we're just trying to fill this. Like, man, like I'm supposed to be your diehard. I'm supposed to be the one, and believe me, we've had long talks because the NHL, we have our own season ticket rep, and we've said like we feel totally ousted. You give us a 10% merch discount every year, which I think you should probably do. I think I know the XFL did that. I think you could get that going, but like, I've bought all my merchandise season 1. Here comes season 3. I'm not buying 10% worth of merchandise to make any of this worthwhile. But I agree. You don't want it. I really went on a rant there, but you don't want to devalue and hurt the people that are also spending full price for your product.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. And also have like VIP packages, have like an exclusive like club deals, people who can, set up events for them. That's another thing that they really need to work on. Again, they need to like work on that being a thing in the area when the people are going to the games. They have to be able to work on that too. I think that's an absolutely humongous part of it as well. Absolutely.
And the upgrade, like that concert we went to also in Arlington for the weekend, we had tickets. I got emailed like the week of like, hey, do you want to upgrade? We're doing VIP. Like you were talking about like, VIP table or you get club. And I knew we didn't want to because we wanted to be on the floor to kind of watch the show. But I'm like, yeah, if I was there with a group or you're like, shoot, man, yeah, we'll take 8 people and maybe we get whatever comes with it, bottle service or a cheap, I'm sure it wasn't like, it's not some Vegas club, it's the House of Blues, but like, yeah, are you trying to upsell those people that even like, I understand wanting to get the new and a $5 one for whatever. Why don't you get an extra $50 out of the people that have already spent money for you as well? I would wager they don't have enough people selling tickets for these markets, but I think you would need to have, I don't know what you're doing. I think like Mark Cuban told that story. Like when he bought the Mavericks, he walked in the next day and just sat on the phone all day making calls. Like I think you need to have, I'm not doubting the energy level of a lot of the Corys and people in the world that are involved in this, but I think like there's a lot of work that can be done that's not necessarily costing dollars.
Well, can we multiply Corey by 100? Because I think that's what we really need to do here.
Remember when he posted TikTok videos like, I'm sitting here at 50-yard line. Like, these could be your tickets. Hit me up. We'll get y'all involved in all this. Like, give a face to this. Like, get these people. That doesn't cost any money at all. These people are already on salary or paid per hour. Whether, they're already on the clock.
Yeah, get them to do something. Work your interns. I also... Seriously.
They should all have interns. You should have interns. You should have 50 interns. I get called every week to have an internship, and I'm just a jack here in West Seattle as a wedding videographer. Like, I get called every week. Hey, do you have anything to do? And I don't. It's too much of like you can get 50 interns if you're the UFL. I guarantee. Work with a school. Get people to graduate that want to go into sports business management. Get them involved.
Well, Reed, that's what I was about to go into as well, like appealing to these college markets. I cannot believe that there's not enough, like, especially when they're playing on these campuses, like University of Houston, right? Like, get the kids in there, get people into the stadium that are in the local area. The University of Memphis, obviously, being right there with the Liberty Bowl. Like, get these kids into the stadium, sell it to them. Sell it to groups, sell it as package deals. Do internships, get them involved. Be like, hey, we got a deal for you to work in the booth or like work as an audiovisual technician. I mean, I got a job straight out of college with my college because they wanted me to be an audiovisual tech. Like, just do something to get people involved with these events. You got to get these people involved. And I think the fact that they haven't appealed to the college markets really, I don't know, just part of me makes me want to scream inside because like they need to appeal to that, not just the families.
Well, I remember when they were moving to Rice and everyone said, well, it's going to be tough. Like, I'm sure they're going to run all these deals and get out of these college kids. That's what everyone said. All the Texas people, all the Houston people said, oh, Rice will be rough, but they're going to get all these college kids. They'll run a bunch of deals. Did they? There's 6,000 people in these games. Did they? Did they appeal at all? Have someone stand outside of the campus there. Come. I mean, I wouldn't want to give away tickets. Like, I would almost say, like, hey, come for your first game free, and then we'll figure it out from there. We'll stamp your ID, and you got to buy to come in the next time. But like, give kids a free game, or give them a $20 credit to their Sodexo, catering on campus or something. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% agree with you. I have not seen the Rice contingency in the Rice Stadium. I'm just going to say that right now. Also, moving on to my last point here, sell your tickets in the fall, please, for the love of God. If you're going to roll into season 2 and talk about having momentum, great. Start selling your tickets. Like, get the venues in place. Start getting the ticket deposits. Start doing it in the fall. We cannot have this late start thing anymore. I know it was a whole merger. I know they were backlogged, but there had to have been at least some semblance of knowing who was going to be there. I know Mike went on about there being 11th hour negotiations, but they had some of the teams in place. And, they refunded people on their tickets. So, like, I don't understand why it wouldn't have been such a bad idea. Just like, oh, sorry, that didn't work out. Here, we'll give you back your tickets. No problem. Just get the tickets out there. Like, that's my biggest thing. Start selling earlier, like during football season, when people are thinking about football too, right? You're in football season. You're in high school. You're in college. You're in NFL. Everybody's thinking about football. Start thinking more about football afterwards. Everyone's in the mode for it. They're not fatigued from it yet. Start thinking about it in the spring. Get people on the ball and start getting those ticket deals out there.
Well, and also, I know you're going to have a schedule here talking that, but the February earlier start, I think behooves that as well, where people are already in kind of the mindset and especially the routine of that, like Sunday mornings and watch the game, or Sunday mornings here, in the East, in the real markets of the UFL caters too in the East Coast. But this was what I had said when when the article had come out, and this kind of curtailed all this, and this goes on the point about that. Because I said, this is great. He's not avoiding the elephant in the room with all this stuff. And I said, it's obviously multi-layered, but the number one thing is you need to keep marketing and ticketing people on during the offseason. The XFL laid off many of their employees immediately following the season. They had already talked about doing seasonal coaching, employees, all of that stuff. So they weren't like layoffs. I mean, like they reorganized their whole marketing office, but then they didn't lay off all these other people. It was like a seasonal hire, and that's why it was misreported and all of that. But like, that doesn't work. This league has to exist 365. And until they do that, I do not think they'll see substantial growth. I don't see that happening this year. I see, June 16th is the championship game. I see June 17th, offices go dark, except for a couple. We'll see. I would love to be, proven wrong about that. All this like, oh, read. And then like, see, it's like, that's what, this is what I want to see, but I don't see that. I think that they see them just having a longer runway next year of like, well, we can do December on knowing what we're doing versus this year where it was later. But I do not see them keeping seasonal people on. I would like to be proven wrong, and therefore I don't see them improving on your point here.
I'm not opposed to having seasonal employees. What I'm opposed to them is just completely shutting it off altogether and just going, like you said, into the dark. That's what I don't want to see. You want to have a seasonal employees, that's fine. I get it. I understand that you can't, you're not going to keep people on staff like who work out of the booths the entire time. Like, that's not going to happen. That's fine. And that's the same deal with, the TV studios too. They can't keep those people in the entire off season. That's fine. I get it. Like, they'll do their research when the time comes back around. But as far as the league operations staff, yeah, you need to keep those people in place, and you need to keep them thinking about next year. Like, that's just how it goes. Like, let's start rolling over to the next year. Let's keep it going. Let's like, for me, it's been really interesting actually following a league that has consistency. I'll say this, knowing that when I watch the CFL, I know they're coming back in 6 months. Like, that's a good feeling to have. And I know because there are still people in the league office that are still working and operating as if nothing's changed. Like, that's a really big feeling to have. We have not had that with all these spring leagues. We didn't really have that. We didn't have that with the AAF. We didn't have that with the XFL, both iterations. We did not have that with, FCF was always kind of up in the air. Like, what are they doing? I don't, USFL, obviously, like, we just have not had that feeling, and if we as people who follow it consistently don't have that feeling, you can't imagine the regular people and casual people are going to have that.
And like, just last point on this, we'll move on because there's a bunch of slides. Like, and I'm trying to brainstorm this. Like, I don't even know if, like, okay, maybe we don't need to do stuff here June, July, August. We'll do the showcases. That's enough temp pole, right? That's enough things going on. But like, maybe August 1st, you're like, we're gonna hire, guy, girl, whatever you want to do, a couple marketing people. And then we're going to look at a calendar and we're going to go, okay, these are, okay, we're in Arlington. Okay, we're going to target, obviously, Dallas. We're in Houston. We're going to target that, St. Louis, everything. But like, let's put a calendar and let's spend a week in Arlington and then a week in San Antonio, a week in Houston. And let's go here. Let's target, okay, this Cowboys game is going to be good. Maybe the Cowboys are playing whoever, there's some sort of overlap, or they're playing the Lions or like, but let's plan this out and just get a handful of these people and rotate them around. But like I said, maybe you don't need to do the full summer, like the showcases that might supplement all that through. But I think especially during football season and when there are events in the fall, you need to be out there targeting in these markets. September 1st or August 1st on, you got to have someone in there at least every couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And consistency is key in this case.
All right, what do we got here? Money.
This is short, but I just wanted to touch on a couple things as far as payment goes. Pay competitive salaries. I know it's hard to pay these players. I get it, but I need to see more like paying consistently versus what they get in the CFL. Now, I know there's different conversion rates because that's Canadian money versus US money. I know it's obviously a longer season. There's a lot of that, but I would like to see some of these player wages increased. 10,000 from the base. I know that I can already hear the accountant screaming, hearing me say that, but like, I need to see more competitive salaries because I think that brings in better quality players and it brings in players who believe that they can actually get a livable paycheck week to week from this league. I need them to continue paying players as far as quarterbacks. I do think that there needs to be some more allocated in that way. One thing I did not put on here, I meant to put on here, was salary cap. Should we consider having a salary cap here? I know there's not individual ownership, but at least allocated money from the league that they know they're going to be able to spend. I wonder if there's like an ability to kind of have a regional salary cap in these teams. I know there's a lot of there's a lot of legislation behind that and all that, but like, clearly we know that some of these players are getting a little bit more like the quarterbacks. At least they were in the XFL than some of the other players. So let's not try and keep that a secret.
You mean, the league would provide some extra money to incentivize that? I like that. To me, and this is interesting because it's the USFL. This is the USFL brain side, but it's what the XFL 2020 did with Vince McMahon. We're like, we have no competition. We will pay what we pay. Right. The second the AAF went away, I remember because I was listening to Mark Perry's show, and it's like, well, Vince McMahon came out and said, like, why would I pay anybody anymore? Like, there's no competition. And I remember when they were having these mergers and the CBA and all these players, like, man, they're really going to be able to take care of us now. And it's like, they're not going to pay you any more money because they don't have to, right? And you need to understand that. So, like, I would agree with that. I think quarterbacks need to be the exception. We know the USFL, at least right now, according from what I know, is that's not gotten carried over from the XFL with the quarterbacks getting paid more. But and we'll see with the coaches too here, right? We've talked about this on the Monday recaps forever. There might be a coach exodus out of this when they go, well, I was getting, whatever with the XFL. And I know Rick had some figures when he was on. I can't remember off the top of my head. And they're like, I'm taking a 50% pay cut. Like, well, I'm going to go. I got enough money. I'm going to go sit at home. So we'll see. But I think that, yes, smart targeted spending to get exceptional players. If there's a couple guys that you need. What was the guy for the Lindsey Brown? What was the guy for the Dragons? We brought in the big running back from the Broncos. Was it the guy?
Lindsey Scott.
Lindsey Scott, right? Like,
yeah.
we can pay a little bit. There's
Or
some
sorry,
of these.
Philip Lindsay. Excuse me, Lindsay
Philip
Scott. Oh my
Lindsay.
gosh,
Lindsay's
Philip
name.
Lindsay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes, Philip
Philip
Lindsay.
Lindsay.
Excuse
Yeah.
me.
Well, I
No,
set you right by saying the wrong. Yes, but that we can target spend certain people, and like I get you're gonna get a little butt hurt in the locker room. Like who cares? Like that's. But welcome to welcome to professional sports. Like, we were paying Brandon Silvers $250,000, and we were yelling for BJ Daniels. I mean, it happens, but like, yeah, I think targeted spending for that would be good. Anything else on the money one here?
well, the other thing I thought about was this whole ownership thing. I know they've talked about having individual owners from a deciding standpoint. First of all, we already talked about this. What owner is going to buy into what it is right now? Other than the St. Louis and maybe the DC franchise, there's not really much incentive to buy these. Second of all, you need to have consistency as far as what the decision making process is. Do you really want a board of ownership people running this league? I already argue that it's a little bit messy in the CFL, and because it's 9 teams, because it's not that many voices. If you have more teams, I would say that's fine, because then you're healthy and you can continue to have you have a board of voices and you have enough people that can like balance out these decisions. But when it's this few of owners factoring into the decision making process, and if one tanks, that's going to really look bad on the entire league. I don't know if that's necessarily the best move right now. I think you continue to have league ownership, maybe community ownership. I don't know if that would be an option. I think that could be something like more incentive for the community to be like, hey, you want to own shares of the team, like the Battlehawks, for example. Like, would people buy into shares of that team? I
Like
think they would.
fan football. Like, do you want to be an owner of the Wild Beasts
And then more like
or
the
Wild
Packers,
Aces or whatever it was? Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like the Packers, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, that kind of more idea, board of governors. Can you have that? I know that varies from team to team, but can we consider that instead of doing it individual ownership? I mean, I think that's something to at least look into and at least incentivize people to become more part of this. Do you want, like, I didn't Ben DiNucci put out something about a few weeks ago on Twitter saying, "Hey, how do I get in on an ownership here?" I mean, that's a former player who played one season in the XFL, not in this version of the league, and he's already talking about that. We have players like you said that own shares in the FCF. You have Marshawn Lynch, you have Austin Eckler, you have guys who have shares and equity in something that they believe in. I think that's worth looking into. Group ownerships, maybe. I think that's something. I don't think one entity should be the ruling point here yet. I don't think there's enough capital and enough teams that are good enough for that. But community ownership, group ownership teams, and then having the league as your umbrella as far as ultimate decision making process, and having a commissioner. Yeah, I think that should be absolutely looked at.
My brain's going wild right now. A couple things before I forget. One, I think we are a decade away from like a real individual owner buying any of this. I mean, 5 to 7 years at least. Truly, honestly. B, could you imagine? We know the headache they have already with Fox and Redbird and Daryl and Russ and Danny, and we want the XFL kickoff and we want this and you want that. And then can you imagine if you're Fred Smith or whatever, the FedEx guy, and then you're coming in here and you're like, I got to argue with 8 of these people, or I got to have you like, how do I fit into this? But what I do love is, like you said, yeah, get Ben in, get somebody. And now I don't want to go crazy. You don't got to be like fan control football, like you said, where you got like 8 people with each team. But yeah, if there's passionate people, and I don't even care what it costs. Maybe it's more just in name than anything. But yeah, let's say Ben DiNucci owns 10% of the Sea Dragons, right? And you go, Ben, put in 10 grand or 5 grand and you get 5% or whatever. And like, again, the Kraken does this a lot. Does Macklemore own a controlling interest in the Seattle Kraken? No, he does not. But it looks really cool when he comes to games. Does Marshawn Lynch own a controlling interest in anything? No. But then you see Marshawn Lynch was at like a Winnipeg Jets game and he was wearing the Kraken, and the people are like, what's Marshawn? It's like, well, he is an owner of, he's an owner of the team. But yeah, get some of these people involved. Get some former players involved. Let's say Bob Stoops retires, but he still wants to have ownership. I think that's a great idea. Even not so much for like raising money and equity and all of that, but just like, hey, there might not be one singular owner that wants to carry this on. because they would have to fight with, 1,800 people at Fox about all this stuff. But like, hey, here's Ben DiNucci is really passionate about that. Look at all these people we have because they believe in this and they want to put in whatever their money is to be involved in that. And God knows even what Fan Control Football was even charging these people to be involved with anyway. I mean, it could have been anything.
Yeah, who knows?
I think that's a good idea. I think that's a great idea.
Well, thank you. I think it's something worth considering, at least if we're going to have any sort of semblance of ownership or identity as far as who is factoring into the decision-making process on these teams. Obviously have good staff in place, director of player personnel, team presidents, all that. Yeah. I think you need to continue having that as well. But, get people involved. Again, the more incentive to get people involved into what's going on in the actual area, and having people that think that they're just being there and being part of it, it means something. It means something to them and it means something to the community. I really believe that. Individual owners, I just think, like you said, we're too far away from that right now. And I don't think there's really as much as I want the league to grow, I will be the first to tell you it's not a capitalistic venture. I mean, we're not buying stocks here. I mean, you want to believe that, but it's not really that simple yet. It's not buying Tesla stock and hoping that it goes to the moon.
It goes up. Yeah.
When an NFL owner does that, they understand what they're getting into and they understand that what value they're going to get out of it. An NBA owner getting that value, what they're going to get out of it. The market's always going up. That's not necessarily the case with this league yet. I want it to be the case, but it's not yet.
All right, let's go out of here. Okay, teams. So this is our expansion talk. We'll probably get a little bit through this. I don't want to go 5 hours on this, but I think we're doing all right.
Yes. So teams. All right. Listen, I'm going to come out and say it. Keep the teams where they are right now. And here's why. If we believe that there was not enough work put into where the teams are right now and that they weren't given a fair shot, then let's give them another chance. Let's consider this year one of a 3-year clock on some of these teams. Okay? Reset the clock. Now, I'm not going to count the USFL hub situation thing. I'm not going to count that. What I am going to count here is Memphis, Houston, and Michigan specifically. Let's say for those teams, they stay in their markets for 3 years. Maybe you build something with this Panthers. There are some Panthers fans. Okay, there are some Panthers fans, and maybe this market hasn't really understood what's in Ford Field or what's going on in Ford Field in spring. Maybe that needs to be a little bit better job of marketing from the UFL and telling people, hey, this is a pretty decent team that's been making the playoffs. Maybe you should go watch them. Market that, put that out there. Houston has been a complete debacle. Obviously, the name changed, the logo changed, the staff changed, they changed stadiums. That's a complete disaster. Get them back in Houston Stadium, University of Houston Stadium, in the renovated stadium. Get the staff, I think, is going to change. I'm sorry. Condolences to the staff, but I think it's going to change. And the roster needs to change. But, get back in good graces with that Houston market. Get with the Roughnecks fans that felt jilted by what happened this past year. In Memphis, like we said, I don't think we necessarily go knocking on Frank Smith's door and getting a big paycheck to save them. Just do a better job of getting their name out there and letting people know that they exist. That's my biggest thing. And amongst all the other marketing ideas that I sent earlier, get all that involved there. I think you give these teams another chance. I don't think moving them is really a great idea because I think it could potentially alienate people. I understand that. But if something's not working after 3 years and you really put in the effort to make it work, then let's consider some other options. But for now, I think you keep everybody stand pat right now. I don't really believe in moving teams.
Well, we've gotten a lot of, every time we did our big expansion relocation with John Lewis and all that. And you do get that all the time. We've been jilted in the past. You don't have enough time. You're like, okay, but you've had this is, Michigan. We've done Memphis now. We've done Michigan. But that's fine. Reset the clock is in. You have no excuses. You can never talk about all that stuff. You talk here, move the XFL back where they belong. But at least right now we can't do that, right? Because then you'd have a 5-3 split.
Yeah, because then it would go back to being 3-5, and then that would be unfair. Unfair. So that's the thing. That damage has already been done. They made that decision. They went forward with it. Is it? In a perfect world, I would love to move Houston back to the XFL. I think that's what I would do if it were up to me. This is the most unrealistic point that I put on this list because I know that's not happening. But I'm sorry, get mad at me, people, but that's USFLers, but that's where they were. That was their brand. That was the USFL brand. That was the Gamblers. I'm going to skip over here for a moment. Actually, also, if you're going to have these teams, and if we're going to have more teams moving forward, can we not rely on these old trademarks? They don't mean anything. I'm sorry, they just don't. They mean nothing to this generation. I'm really tired of hearing this. Well, this this team from the '80s is back. No one. I'm sorry. No, there's just not the fan base there. That generational support is not there because they haven't existed for that period of time for almost 40 years. It's not going to just magically come back because the trademark is there. It's like just dusting off some trophy on the shelf and be like, guys, look at this trophy I have. It's like, cool, awesome. I haven't looked at it. It's I visited your house 20 times and I haven't even thought that it existed, like I'm tired of the trademarks. I think you got to just create your own brands. That's again, something that I really liked in the XFL. They're trying new brands. They're trying new ideas. They're trying to, establish an identity. Don't try to bowl out an old identity. Jim Kelly is not coming back to play for the Gamblers. I'm sorry. He's just not. Let's try something else here.
And to put just the Roughnecks thing real quick, when the giveaway here that's at the end of the show, far and away, PJ Walker had the most with the Roughnecks, had the most, people wanting to be a part of that, right? And then Tamu was high there, and then Silvers, as you would imagine, and then Chirpin the least. But yeah, because it was, we want that Roughnecks, we want that PJ Walker, we want all that. And and like I said, I just think they totally undervalued that. Oh, it's 5 weeks and who cares and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I also agree. It was the same thing when they're like the UFL, like they got the the league trademark, like, oh, do you think they're going to use, because back in they had the Iowa Husky whatever, and you're like, there's no equity in that at all. I have argued on this show that there was no equity in even these USFL ones, but especially the whatever the UFL ones that they had. I couldn't even tell you. I mean, people talk like the Wildcats. I think maybe just because it's 2020 and not the 1980s. But I think these USFL ones, like, oh well, the Canton Gold was big back, or we get I think you've already attracted any of that demo you're going to get by just existing as a USFL. I don't think adding any old legacy USFL stuff is going to do any good. I think you might get some jilted XFL fans, but I still would probably argue you probably have as many of the XFL people as you. I don't think that many people stopped. But yeah, maybe you get that because that's only 4 years ago versus anything else.
I mean, that's the thing. It's recent, right? I mean, you could bring back DC Defenders because you remember 2020. Those fans clearly remembered. You can bring back the St. Louis Battlehawks because those fans remembered. So that's fine because that's recent. That's recency. That's things that people have a memory of. You don't have those memories with the USFL. Most people don't. I'm sorry. That's not the demo that they're going to be looking at. So they have to consider creating new identities, new brands. That's my point, which leads me to my next point. Yes, I also believe that there needs to be at least some little bit of expansion here, but just by 2, okay? And what I would really like to see at least is a West Coast team, maybe 2 West Coast teams. Maybe obviously you want to have, if I was going to move Houston back, I would put 2 teams in the USFL. But if you're not going to do that, then 1 for each, okay? So let's consider this. I want a team. Obviously, I want a team in San Diego. That's been a crying point for me forever.
But that's not even just because you live there. It's because it makes so much sense. Because it's the West Coast St. Louis that you can capture that jilted fan base. I mean, it's not just because you are in San Diego.
Well, it's 2 points. One, let's get a Western demographic because the region map is atrocious. Just considering that it's not even past the Mississippi is insane. You got, or at least for unless you're counting Texas, that's nuts. You got to be able to have teams in the West Coast. Just get that demographic there. So Oakland, a city that has been completely jilted because all their teams have left. I mean, that's really a market you could tap into. Do you play in the Coliseum? I'm not necessarily sure about that. Maybe you find a different venue, but there's growth potential there because they've lost so much there, right? San Diego lost Chargers. They're on year 8 of that. That's something you can tap into. And obviously the AAF thought about that and it kind of worked until, they collapsed. Then I thought about a wild card here. I know this is going to sound completely, this is off my rocker. Andrew, what the hell are you talking about? Fargo, North Dakota. Listen, I know Fargo is not the biggest town, and I know most of these markets are at least in big metropolitan areas. You have only about 120, 125,000 in the Fargo area, but something that they really like to support are the North Dakota State Bison, which are a very wildly successful college team that play in a 18,700 capacity stadium. Not that big. And you can at least galvanize and maybe get that town involved in spring football, because at least it's something where, oh, there's a professional team that is playing in my area. That's really cool. I know it's not the glitziest town. I know it's not sexy, but if you're already having these teams in hubs anyways, and you're flying the players out, why not? I mean, if you're not telling people, if you're deciding not to tell people, hey, you don't have to go live in Fargo, North Dakota at the beginning of, tail end of winter, like, let's consider that. I think that would be really cool. Try something like a market that I think has shown football enthusiasm, and then maybe try that out. That's like kind of my wild one. I know people have argued for things like Canton and Tulsa, and that's fine. I understand that. Fargo's kind of like my wild card idea. Like, maybe let's think about that one. That's kind of a crazy one, but I would say the top two would be Oakland and San Diego, obviously.
Yeah, last point on this, because I at least for me, I've hammered a lot of these points over the last couple of weeks. So I don't want to regurgitate too much of what I've said, but like, even when I tweeted today, like, put a team in San Diego because of the showcases, and you got all these people like, oh yes, let's kill the league with the California taxes. I don't care. You got to put one there. I don't care. You got to pay for it. It's fine. You have to have a West Coast presence. The Vegas thing didn't work. You can't really do Reno or anything. Like, Portland is not. And, you're worried about travel. At least flying to San Diego from Texas is easier than getting up to Seattle. But you got to do it. I don't care. You got to bite the bullet. You got to have a team in California. Sorry.
Reed, American Airlines has, I don't know how many flights from DFW to San Diego, but it's a lot. I've done it many times. It's cheap, it's affordable, and they're ubiquitous.
And the taxes aren't the same because the players, like, you comp it, like, if it's that disparaging, because from what I remember when we did the whole pay breakdown is, right, you're taxed, like, when they play in California, you're taxed, right? And then when you play, you're like, wherever you play the game, which I think is so weird, because I think if you're based out of Texas, but like, I understand the state's got to get their things. So then if you have to compensate as a league, if you have to go, okay, the players that play in Texas, we're going to pay them an extra 5% to make up for it, just to balance it out, so that like, that's just what you have to do. You have the money to do it. If you're not going to pay the players more, whatever, I would get to that, but I think whatever it is, you have to turn that over. You got to play at Snapdragon or whatever that is in San Diego and put it to bed.
I just think, I love Snapdragon as a venue. I really do. And I think it's not an overwhelming amount of capacity. It's about 35,000. I don't know if you're going to fill that necessarily, but just even getting it half full, I think would be an accomplishment, just to get something in there. And look, the city continues to add sports, so they will have competition as far as other pro entities. Just in the last 2 years, you've added a very decently popular women's soccer team. They have rugby. They have this new stadium that everyone's playing at. There's an MLS team that's coming next year that's being added. There's an NBA G League team that's being added at the end of this year. Like, they're getting other pro entities in the city again.
You're running out of time.
They're running out of time. That's the thing. You're starting to lose competition to everybody else, which is why, and this is my biggest thought, and I've thought about this now with how this league operates. If you're going to put it in San Diego, push your chips into the middle of the table. Do not be complacent. Yep. Push your chips in, because guess what? Everybody else is. All these other teams are putting out, merchandise. They're doing, raffling for tickets. They're doing all kinds of stuff to get people into the stadium. Like I said, the Padres have been selling out like gangbusters. Like, people are starting to get back into the idea of like, okay, there's pro sports options in the city again. We're not just a fair weather city because the Chargers left. That's not our identity, and that's great. That's fantastic for the sports identity of this city. And if the UFL is going to come here, they need to treat that seriously, and they need to treat the people seriously. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, and I like Oakland too, because that's, and we got all that. So let's but we'll move on here. But I like Oakland too. Is I just don't know quite the stadium alignment. Yeah, how do you do all that where they play? But anyway, I think Oakland. So I don't care. It's anywhere in California. I would be fine with playing. When I lived in Bakersfield, we shot high school football games in Tehachapi. I don't care if it's in Tehachapi in Kern County. Like, you got to play somewhere. You got to get out. All right, broadcast here. We'll hammer through this. Let's try to keep this like hour 15 maybe.
All right, broadcast. I feel very passionately about this, and this is maybe something people don't talk about as much, but I really want to. All right, first of all, ESPN, stop talking about betting so much. It's driving me nuts. Listen, I've had it. I'm somebody that cares a lot about, broadcasting a lot. I've been a broadcaster. I've done TV and radio broadcasting. it drives me absolutely bonkers to hear how much they talk about betting. And look, I don't know if that's a command from on high or if somebody's telling them to say all this, but it drives me absolutely bonkers when there's a game that's on the line that has playoff implications and all they can talk about is player props and the over-under. I don't want to hear about it. Yep. And I don't care if you think your bettors want to hear about it. In fact, bettors aren't looking for that during the game. They know that's going on. They have that information in the back of their head the entire time it's happening. As somebody who has placed bets before, I understand that that's happening. And I don't need the screen to remind me of that. Okay. I really don't. I just don't. And I don't need to hear that anymore from these broadcasts. There needs to be a clampdown from the league and tell these TV partners to be like, listen, let's chill out on this a little bit.
Well, and also, and I've got, because I've said a lot of these, but like, yeah, the people that know what you're talking about are smarter than the broadcasters that are talking about it. So then you are just annoying the casual people that don't really know what's going on. Because, like, spoiler alert, the people that I know that have been on the show, that like the Cody Maines of the world, that would like love to get in a room for a half an hour with any of these USFL execs and talk to them about how to actually implement DFS and sports betting and fantasy, like, they are smarter than anybody in the league that is talking about this. And so every time I hear, and this is no offense to people of the show, and I would probably take Stormy out of it. I think Stormy does a really good job, and I think Stormy really knows. But I would talk mostly the booth people. They know more than you, and you sound like an idiot when you're talking. It's the over. It's the over. It's the over. It's the over. Like, you're only annoying the people that don't know what you're talking about, because everybody else that actually cares about it is smarter than you. And so please, STF you. Like, I'm very, very tired of it. It's very much a chore to watch some of these games, especially on ESPN.
Yeah. And look, I think it delegitimizes the product that they're trying to get out there, because they're saying to you, well, all this is just a giant prop. That's all it is. There's no implications to this. Like, this is just,
we don't care about the game. It's only the people that are winning. Yes, you should only care about this because if you have money on it.
That's how it sounds to me, and I think that's a gigantic disservice to this league. I really do, and the UFL needs to say something about it. Yeah. Moving on, I do think, just to kind of touch up on it, the bets should be covered before the games, which I think Fox does a good job of. They mentioned it a little bit at the top, and then they're like, okay, there you go. I remember they had the live lines underneath next to play teams, especially back in 2020. They would have the spread cover on both teams, but they didn't really talk about that as much. They just said, well, okay, here it is. It's the information that you need. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. They touched on it and then they let it run. And if you want to talk about the over-under when it's hit, sure, that's fine if it's an appropriate time to do that, but don't force it. Don't force that information in there. That's really the biggest thing. But I want the broadcasters to not really touch on it that much. So that's the last thing I'll say about that. As far as the players go, I want them to interview these players and these coaches, but can we do it when they're not, heaving and hawing? Like, I know they're trying to get in the moment of the emotion, but I think it's better when they've had a chance to kind of collect themselves. Yeah. I really do believe that. Let them celebrate their teammates and let them get a breather and then talk to them, not, run up to them right after they caught a touchdown. I just don't think that works. I really don't. I want to see them. I know people want to catch them in the moment, but I would rather, we're getting those moments on audio. Like, I love when they're talking to the coaches and they're getting heated, about certain things. You get that.
The fly on the wall stuff.
That's great. I love that. That's fine. But when you want to talk to them, do it when they're sitting down, and you can say, hey, what are you looking at? What did you miss on that last play? That's fine. I'm okay with that, but not in the moment. Just give them a moment to collect themselves.
One quick note, I was just looking because I don't bet on sports at all, but I was like, can you bet on sports in Washington? So we can do it at the tribal casino. So that's all legal to do that. Like, because I watch basically every Mariner game that I'm not at. I don't think I could tell you one time in the last 3 years that any broadcaster has ever brought up a prop bet, the over under, a team's favorited, ever. Like, I couldn't tell you one time. And I watch every game with the sound on, invested the whole time. Like, yeah. So, and again, I know baseball is not football, and a lot of people that got this, like, they got betting on football. I'm just saying, I watch sports all the time, and they're not hammering it home. Anyway, please, this is good.
I mean, I don't see that from NFL broadcasters. The Padres broadcasters certainly don't do that ever. Again, that's knowledge you have in the back of your head when you know that you're looking for that, and that's fine. That's okay, but not for the purposes of a casual audience that you need to bring it up that many times. You really don't. So that's all I'll say about that. Also, if you're not going to talk about betting, let's talk about the stories of these players. And also, let's not talk about how they're going to be in the NFL if they do X, Y, Z. I don't want to hear about that either. I want to focus on your merits as a league and what these players are getting from this league. I think the CFL does a really good job of this. The CFL talks about their players. They talk about previous players. They talk about, and I know, I get it. It's a lot more history and all that. I understand. But like, talk about the players that you have right now. When somebody is in the NFL and you can say, oh, this guy is doing really well. That's awesome. Good for him. Great. Awesome. Bring that up. But not in the moment of, oh, we're trying to push this guy out of here. You know, do you think the CFL was eager to push Nathan Rourke out of their league and get him in the NFL? Hell no, they weren't. They were trying to keep him around, but they knew in the back of their heads that was going to happen, probably based on how he was performing. But, you know, they all, I'm sure, secretly wished that he would stay, and they would never talk about him moving on. That was never the conversation. The opportunity was going to come later when he made that decision. That's a discussion for afterwards.
Well, again, it's a crutch of that. I know these players, but I know, like, I know the broadcasters do these calls. I'm sure they're very cursory level things. I mean, I've seen the obviously the ESPN production calls are different than like the Zoom calls that we get, like with, you know, the three people I saw today, like asking, like it was like 40 minutes of just three people asking the players questions. Like, okay, like, I let's get more. I don't know. I don't feel like that's the best use of time, but considering who I saw on the call, but like they don't know, they don't have the time to get invested in all that all week, right? Like you listen to baseball broadcasts, like, man, I was down the clubhouse earlier today, and like Julio was showing me the calluses on his hands because he'd been here like so bad. Like they're not, and at least this year, like the broadcasters are all in the markets, at least from what I can tell. I know they were in Arlington, like the USFL, like they wouldn't even fly people in. They're just like, I mean, they would be at the sound stand. Like it's like, why haven't I seen Kevin Kugler on TV the entire time? Like, oh, it's because they're not there. So like, but yeah, they're grasping for straws. But like, I don't know if you got to do a couple more production calls, if you got to give a couple of these guys Zoom calls so they can talk with some of these guys, but they need to have more to talk about because otherwise it's the NFL. It's Battlehawks have a lot of fans, and then it's the over-under. Like they're running out of stuff to talk about. Not all of them. Some of them do, but not all of them do the same amount of research, and you can tell which ones do.
I agree, and they need to talk to these players beforehand. And on that note, if there could be a pregame show on some of these players and their profiles, that would be great. Just half an hour. They don't need much, but I know it's hard for programming because there's all these other things they're slotting it into, which again, we'll go into my next point about scheduling. I think it's possible if you are able to get it for maybe certain games or able to get more of coverage of that way. I just think it's really important to have that there and have that be part of building up to what's happening and people realizing, oh, there's a game coming up soon. That's good. You know, you need to have that sort of preload, I think. And I really would like to see more of that.
Last point on this, we'll go on. I think a pre-show would be beneficial more to the UFL than a post-show of getting people invested in this than like, hey, Scooby and what's his name are talking like, we'll see you next Saturday. Like, and also promoted on you. Like, I think it was Mark Perry had to post on the UFL News Hub, like, hey, could we get the UFL to promote this? And like Scooby's retweeting. They were like, what is it with the league? Like, I understand you don't want to retweet Anthony's article with Sports Illustrated, whatever, but like, you know, last year the XFL would retweet like some fan stuff, like we're at the game, and that's fine. Like the Mariners will retweet me every once in a while if I post a cool photo there, but like, retweet the damn show of the people. Like, this is your thing. Like, if you're not gonna, like, God forbid, and like, spoiler alert, the Seattle Kraken, they'll retweet articles that cover their team. And when someone posts like, hey, this person's injured out the rest of the game, the Kraken, they'll tweet it. They don't, as long it's legitimate, it's real. But this whole like, well, we can only retweet, and like, then today we're gonna retweet 87 inactives all at one time at 7:00 on a Thursday. Like, but then we're not going to retweet the UFL Today show ever that's happening, that's on your own stupid network. Put it on ESPN. Don't just put it on YouTube. But yeah, like, at least make it visible that way. It's crazy.
Yeah, sorry. It is. No, I agree. They need to make it more visible. I agree. All what you said.
All right, last one here, because the Jordy's looking through the window here. Like, what am I screaming about?
All right, last point I just want to make here, and I really believe in this for two big reasons. I want this schedule to be the week after the Super Bowl. Now, look, in the future, this might change a little bit because I do believe at some point the NFL is going to have an 18-game schedule and they're going to be on President's Day weekend. For the time being, let's put this on President's Day weekend and let's continue to have that. It's probably going to be a week after that eventually, but I need to have it there because for two reasons. I know everyone's concerned about the weather and, oh, it's too cold. I don't, but I also think it's better for games to be too cold than to be too hot, in my opinion. I would rather deal with that than deal with heat. Secondly, better for the players. You can get these players in the mini camps in the NFL. You can get them into OTAs. You can get them signed on the CFL rosters during preseason. You can get them into other leagues. It's better for the players and it's better for their transitioning. And as a TV viewer, I got a bit, there's other things going on. We've talked about this ad nauseum. As summer starts to approach, people are just not there and they're starting to think about other things. You got to make sure that you appeal to these people. If you are going to have this TV schedule, you need to be able to get people incentivized to watch these games. I think having it right after the Super Bowl and everyone's thinking about football is a great way to do it, sort of extend out. And then, yes, you do run into March Madness. I understand that. As I said, one of the biggest things you can have is a rolling bye and have different bye weeks involved in the schedule. Try to schedule it or at least pinpoint it in a way that maybe you can have the championship game the week after Mother's Day, not during Mother's Day weekend. Nothing conflicts with it, and then we can move on. Also not have it on Memorial Day weekend if possible. But again, I know there's some finagling that has to happen there. But for me, that would be the perfect schedule. I think the XFL schedule did it right last year. I'm just going to say it right now. I really believed in it. I like that everything was kind of wrapped up by mid-May, and we can move on and didn't have to worry about anything else. I know everyone's going to be screaming like, well, the USFL was still going on. Yes, it was. But June was starting to grind on. And I just was starting to get a little bit tired there. Okay. I'm just going to be fair there. I want to say that it needs to start earlier, keep the UFL and keep it earlier and keep it the week after the Super Bowl. I really believe in that.
I will say, it just as and I agree with you, but just as a contrarian, ratings were really good this last weekend. So, at least there's that. And I agree with you 100%. Temps, players. I know the Houston game, I think, was crazy hot. They were with it, whatever the clip, they had the water in the center's crotch, and he's like, that's why my balls wet coming out. I thought that was funny. Do more of that than the, oh yeah, oh, it's a really good play. I would rather see more of that fly on the wall or, Coach Flip yelling BS. I like the earlier start. I think it's better for the players because even if they don't immediately get picked up, you have more opportunity in the next 3 months than you're shackled into a league and then getting injured and then getting out and then trying to figure it out. Even if you're injured or get banged up in the playoffs, you still have a couple months, you could figure it out. But that being said, like I said, ratings are good, which is great. And part of that is just better networks and everything else. But I thought this last weekend was going to be a schnoz with not the games meaning a lot. And it was actually good. So we'll see kind of the playoffs. Hopefully they grow. But I do agree with you on that.
Yeah, no, I agree too. And look, I think you can finagle around those ratings. I really do. Last thing I'll say, I remember there being a player like Darnell Sankey last year winning the XFL championship game with Arlington and then moving on to the CFL and then winning the championship with Montreal and doing some late season pushing there. I just love to see these players play in more leagues, get more opportunities. If they're not going to make NFL rosters, hell, let's get them on other fields. Let's continue to see them play and let's continue to see them be active. I really love that idea. And I think that schedule makes a lot of sense. So that's my 2 cents on everything. That's what I believe in. And that's what I think the UFL should do. I'm here for free consultation if they ever need it. Do I ever think they're going to call me? Probably not. But you know what? I'm here if they need it. My phone is always on.
Yeah, I do like that when they're like Reed and Andy, or oh yeah, we're swaying the whatever. But again, we've been through this a lot, passionate about it. We're probably saying stuff they know. They're probably saying stuff, maybe they know but don't want to admit. I think it's probably some of it, right? I think there was a lot of hubris involved in this. Surprisingly so, kind of having lived through all this for the last couple of years, and especially where the way the CFL does, and then with the USFL, season 1, I'm okay, what? We were just at the Grey Cup, 3 months ago, and now, okay, what's again, I think knowing your place and all this right now and wanting to build to that, but I think the end of my point here, and this is a conversation for the offseason, but how we are handling like all of this training camp media, everything going in needs to be reevaluated going into next year. Because I think the situation they have right now with whether they're overworked or not, these team communications people, and then we have 40-minute Zoom calls that nobody's on, and we have other ones that aren't whatever, that no one even shows up because they don't, and then we have people that are trying to schedule, and like I said, I've just given up. Like that needs to be remedied, and that's a whole nother kind of off-season topic, I think, for like kind of media relations in the UFL. Maybe we want to tackle that at some point. This was a little bit more logistics today, but it's a work in progress. But I think at least we had tangible things here, because people say like, you bitch and moan and complain, and like, here you go. Here's what I thought it was a good bulleted we could kind of go through and not get too meandering. So I thought it was good.
Absolutely. No, I've been looking forward to this. And and I'll just say this, this is from reading comments. This is from listening to people on your show. This is from listening to other people on other shows talking about these leagues. This is years worth of buildup, putting forth this kind of plan because of all the things that we've seen past, present, and hopefully future that leads me into creating this list. This is why this is comprehensive thoughts on all kinds of different things. And you know what? They're going to continue to change as this landscape changes. But that's sort of where I stand right now based on just so many other things that have transpired over the last few years. And I'm happy to have been part of it. Honestly, it's been really interesting to kind of be part of all that process. And I can't wait again, like I said, for CFL next week. Speaking of another chapter in another league.
Well, Andy, this has been good. I appreciate it. Like I said, we've got 8 teams now. Next year, we'll figure out expansion. Good time to start talking about all this stuff. Appreciate the work. Stay tuned after the break here. Ryan Ballantine and beyond. Like I said, give the CFL. It's already the same kind of like. I know the football rules are a little bit different. But like if you're fine watching UFL and kind of the way that game is, where it's not always 100%, like this will be good. We'll see you. Appreciate it, Andy. We'll figure out what we're doing next week, and we'll see you guys after the break. Thanks. Well, the last time I saw this gentleman, we were sharing an adult beverage on the Las Vegas Strip, and I never want to, make fun of children at all, but I am glad that the Golden Knights did not advance in the Stanley Cup playoffs. As a Seattle Kraken fan, I bet it was good to see, but it was good to at least be able to collect some merchandise for your family. How are you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing well. I was also, as soon as they lost, I ran downstairs and rubbed my child's face in it. So don't worry about that. He's old enough. He's a teenager now. I was also super excited to see them lose.
That's good. Yeah, deep in here, I had Dave Campbell on last week, and Oilers fan, them running wild and everything else. So we're here CFL stuff today, talking Stampeders, maybe a slight 2% Lions here just because of that. But I was trying that we were going to get Ticats people on this week, and it just didn't work out timing wise. So we got Ryan carrying the load for the CFL. Big news coming out, right? Malik Henry getting injured. That I think happened before we were going to record anyway, but then certainly now to have a little bit more time to reflect on that. Thoughts on that and how big of an injury is that for the Stampeders?
I mean, that's just a devastating injury for a whole host of reasons. Football being, important, obviously, as Malik was a 1,000-yard receiver when he was healthy last. It looked like he was about to have a breakout year last year when he went down with his ACL or his Achilles tear last season. So he was gone from week 3 throughout the rest of the year. And so to lose him to patellar tendon tear, it's awful for a guy to work his way back and be ready to go, only to go down with a different injury down the line. It's just incredibly difficult to see for Malik as a person, let alone his impact on not only the team but the league. The guy's a great dynamic receiver, and he was the guy that was putting up highlights on a weekly basis. So that the league loses Malik Henry, I think, is a bad thing, and it's especially bad for Calgary.
Well, and especially, preseason is always kind of the worst too of that. And was this in practice, I assume, right, coming out of the preseason game?
Yeah, it was in practice the other day. Honestly, though, I you never want anybody to get injured, right? Obviously, that's not what I'm suggesting, but the timing of the injury is probably better for the Stampeders than it was last season. Last season, it happened in week 3. Rosters are kind of set around the league. There's not an opportunity to go out and find somebody, get them into your system, get them up to speed before game action is taking place. So there wasn't kind of that built-in replacement. And while I don't know that there is an immediate replacement for Malik Henry on the roster, they have had two guys in Eccles and Brooks that have looked really good in the preseason so far and in their preseason action. Whether or not that can translate into regular season play, we'll have to see. But both of those players have shown that they're able to catch the ball and run routes. And that's something that you need. Whether or not they're going to be able to do it in game speed, I think we'll have to wait to see on Friday. And then again throughout the course of the season.
I think that's a good point. Yeah, at least now you kind of can pivot or figure out what you need to do here going in. I was curious and just kind of thinking about you coming on, because obviously here, teams kind of revamping going into this year, and with Edmonton, with McLeod, and BC was there last year. Obviously didn't make it all the way, but enough to kind of, I know Calgary made the playoffs, but it was one of those really kind of limped in with all that.
That's not in quotes. They just made the playoffs. There's no air quotes around making the playoffs. You do or you don't. And the Stampeders made the playoffs. Were they the worst playoff team in 27 years? Yes. But they were still a playoff team.
Well, that's my point. So I'm curious, going into this year, what is the expectation for that? Because obviously that's not good enough to get in and be, etched out. But I think there's also like a lot more, what is it going to happen with Bo and Hamilton? What's going to happen with McLeod? What are the expectations, I guess, for the Stampeders right now?
I think the Stampeders are still in a good enough spot that they can make the playoffs again this year. I don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility for them to be better than Saskatchewan and Edmonton. In Sask, you've got a brand new coach in Corey Mace who will make that team better, but it takes time to instill a culture. That's not something that you walk in the door and you just have on day one. So it may take a season for Corey Mace and all of the new coaches there to really kind of instill that belief in the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I think Edmonton is still a dumpster fire. Their problem last year was that they couldn't protect the quarterback. So what they've done is they've gone out and overpaid for a barely mobile quarterback. I don't understand how anybody thought McLeod Bethel-Thompson was the answer behind an offensive line that can't block. Yes, he gets the ball out faster, I suppose, but that's still not going to be any good. I mean, at what point? I mean, you've got Geno Lewis there, but is he going to be able to get downfield enough or fast enough for McLeod Bethel-Thompson to hit him without Thompson being just run over by defenses and blitzes and everything else? I really don't understand the thinking there. It's obvious that Chris Jones doesn't believe in Trey Ford, which is crazy to me. Like, I don't understand how you saw what that guy did last year and not thought that, hey, with a little more time and a little more experience, he could really be something. But who knows? I mean, the way that offensive line is, Bethel-Thompson could be injured within a couple weeks, and not, you can only take so many sacks on an aged body. And who knows how long McLeod Bethel-Thompson will be behind that line. So I think when you look at Saskatchewan and Edmonton as two teams in the West that aren't very good, you've got Hamilton, who did not look good. You've got Ottawa, who hasn't been good since they stole a Grey Cup championship from the Stampeders. So at that point, those are four teams that are questionable to make the playoffs, and 6 out of 9 teams make the playoffs. So is it unreasonable to think that Calgary could be one of those 6? I don't think so. I think if they get improved play from their own tackles, which was the issue with the offense last year, was Jake Maier had no time to throw the ball. If they get improved play from their tackles, I think the Stampeders are due a rebound season.
So I'm glad that you agree. I mean, everyone with this McLeod Bethel-Thompson, Trey Ford thing, and like I said, we had Dave Campbell on, and not only is it this, but now you're hurting Trey Ford's development because now he's going to be at the end, and they're approaching the end of his rookie deal. Like, how does he, and then you can be all, McLeod's the locker room guy and comes in and dabs everyone up, but it's still like, you're delaying this. I remember beginning of the last season, preseason, I'm like, I want Trey Ford on the podcast. He's going to be the starting quarterback. And then the season starts out. I'm like, what the heck's going on? Like, I just was baffling to me. I always remember this is Trey Ford sitting in an empty Commonwealth, like beautiful sun behind him, so excited for the season. And then, it finally came around to that, but it was just like, so you agree I don't know why you don't keep Trey and then pay the money to get some other people in there versus dump it all on McLeod. And I love McLeod.
I get it as like, a Southern American. Maybe Chris Jones just hates Ford like most of us do. He's a Dodge man. And the question is whether or not Bethel Thompson will be able to dodge his way past tacklers and get the ball down the field, because I'm baffled with the idea that you spent that much money. Just spend that money on blockers for Trey Ford. Like, why spend the money on the offensive line? Spend the money on the defensive line. Why are you paying McLeod Bethel Thompson to come back to the CFL and be ahead of a guy that has that kind of dynamism that is rare? I don't get it. I don't understand.
In terms of Saskatchewan, and I think it was Rod, I think it was just him and Darren talking this week. I saw the clip, but people can believe in Corey Mace, but I think you said, still going to be kind of a train wreck there. I don't know, Trevor Harris coming back, and he's older than I am, and I feel like I couldn't play anything or do anything of any sort of athletics. So, in terms of it, we'll circle back around to Calgary, but yeah, I don't know with Saskatchewan. Any other detailed thoughts on that?
Again, it's going to be whether or not they can keep Trevor Harris upright. He's another guy that's not very mobile back there, and it cost them last season because they couldn't block for him. So did they improve the offensive line enough? I mean, they did go out and spend money on free agents. They plucked Ryan Sevier out of Calgary. He's going to be there, and he's been a solid contributor. I think there were people in the media here who suggested that Ryan Sevier should be getting the votes for the most outstanding offensive lineman out of Calgary the last couple seasons. So we'll see whether or not he's able to kind of step forward and be that guy to protect the quarterback. But again, if you don't protect Trevor Harris, he's going to get eaten alive. He's not an escapable quarterback. He's not a guy that you're counting on to be on the run.
In terms of Mayer here, and I think I saw, was it photos, he's really slimmed down here coming into camp, I think. I get one of our Calgary fans posting about that. What's the pressure on him kind of here with Calgary? Because it's really kind of been an up and down and obviously make or break, but I felt like that was the way last year. But then again, I feel like it's make or break, and then you make the playoffs. Okay, well, that's fine then. It's good enough, but I don't know what expectations for him.
He had guaranteed money this year. So I think there's that gave him certainly an advantage towards playing in the number one spot. It's been when he had Derek Dennis and Julian Good-Jones, who since went to the NFL and has retired at tackle, he was statistically comparable to Zach Collaros, who everyone will suggest is the best quarterback in the league right now. That's maybe not suspended. You've got those two guys, you've got Collaros at the top and Jake Mayer with the Calgary, much of the Calgary offense that's there currently was statistically comparable to Zach Collaros. That's why he got the job and kept the job over Bo Levi Mitchell. Last year, he came out through a ton of interceptions in the early going because he wasn't getting any blocking from his tackles. So he was having to make decisions faster. He was throwing the ball out. Those interceptions dropped off towards the end of the year. The offense got better towards the end of the year, even though you lost probably 3 or 4 of your best receivers in Calgary last year, and Jake Mayer was still having a better offensive showing in the back half of the year than he was in the front. Can he carry that momentum into this season? Can he eliminate his mistakes? Can he take off every once in a while to remind linebackers to stay home and not just be able to drop into coverage? Those are the questions that Jake Mayer has to answer this year, and we'll see what he's able to bring. But I think it starts and ends with Jake Mayer, with whether or not he's getting good protection from the tackles. I think he's got no problem with the interior of that offensive line, but the bookends are going to have to do their job, or Jake could be in some trouble again.
Do you believe in Jake? Are you still all in on this? You've watched him every week.
This is the season. Again, do you get 2022 Jake Mayer? Do you get 2023 Jake Mayer? And all of that comes down to whether or not you've got protection. And I think if you don't have protection, you might start to see Schultz sooner than later, because he is able to scramble. He is able to go on the run. But in that preseason game last week, I thought I liked Jake's ball a little more than I liked Schultz's ball. It didn't hang up as much. It was, he was throwing the ball deeper than he did all of last season. Almost, a third of his passes were more than 20 yards, which was unusual for last year. He completed, a couple of those. He had those middle runs. Last year, he was very effective under 10 yards, as a quarterback should be. But beyond 10 yards, he wasn't great. He only attempted, out of his 12 pass attempts last week, he only threw 2, I think, that were below that 10-yard mark. So they're looking to push the ball a little further downfield, and we'll see if they're able to continue to do that here on Friday.
Well, because that was the thing, right? Yeah, Jake would come out and he'd have, 30 of 40 whatever completions. It would be for like 180 yards. Like, it just wouldn't be.
Yeah, he was averaging 5 or 6 yards. His depth of target wasn't that deep. So whether or not that changes this year, I hope it does. I mean, honestly, I think he needs to be, in order to be successful, he needs to be in that 8.5, 9 range that everybody else is from a depth of target standpoint. We'll see if that's what the offense brings this year. Also, let's not forget you've got changes in the offensive mindset as well, with Mark Mueller moving on to Saskatchewan. So that's changing some of the offensive discussion and offensive conversation, and bringing in that new coach from Eastern Washington.
Because that was the thing. Because never, is it, or do we don't trust Jake? Are we not doing the offense the correct way? Is he doesn't have enough time? I just never know what it is. Because obviously, you've seen him do it in the past, and he came out. I mean, what was that debut game? It feels like forever ago, and he's throwing all over the yard. And he was like, I just don't. I never understand that. It was we just don't trust him, or the offense just isn't working in the way that he needs it to be done.
Yeah, again, this is the year, right? You've had a year that did work, you had a year that didn't work. So now we need to find out. This is the year where Jake Maier either becomes a full-time, long-term starter in the CFL, or he doesn't.
And you mentioned, do you have any hot Chad takes? Do you want to say anything while you're on here about that? We've covered it a couple weeks ago with the Toronto. I think Dan Ralph and all that. Anything with Chad you want to get off your chest? It's okay if not.
No. I mean, here's the thing. I think the league eventually did the right thing, and took their time on an investigation and set it as a minimum of 9 games. Whether or not we ever see Chad Kelly again is a question, I think, that is somewhat in the air. But from a purely team standpoint, I don't know what happens in the locker room if he does come back. Mm-hmm. And whether or not it's not difficult to track, even on X, that when things are being said about Chad Kelly in a negative light, some of his former teammates are among the first to like those tweets on X. And so if some of your former teammates are liking disparaging things about you, and you've spent 9 games away, what does that do to the locker room presence? And I'm not in the locker room, and I don't know. Again, this at the moment is the league found enough evidence to justify putting that suspension on, but the matter is still in front of the courts, and until there is a decision there, I obviously won't assign innocence or guilt. Innocence until proven guilty, in fact. So you have to, it's in the court, and when that's resolved, it's resolved. But as far as the league is concerned, I just don't know how positive an impact he would make coming in off a 9-game suspension if his former teammates are out there very readily to publicly call him out. What does that mean for who he is in the room and everything else? Never mind the fact that he's the league's highest player. I think that's also a highest paid player. I think that's also a difficult road to hoe. So I don't care for the way the Argos have handled the situation. But I think the league eventually got it right. And I mean, they had time to do so. Everybody was very quick to jump on the league, but they did take their time. They did do an investigation. It's not like he was playing, week in and week out while we were waiting for this decision. It was the off season. So, I think the league eventually got it right to start to put that out.
Yeah, well, I think, and I mean, just with him being gone half the season, I mean, to me here in the East is totally, I mean, it just totally flips on a script. Just any thoughts of the wider, and I want to circle back to here, the Calgary going into the weekend here, but like just thoughts on the East, and it just feeling a lot more open now where you have I don't know, it felt like, had this suspension not happened, it's Montreal and Toronto again, and, everyone else trying to kind of figure it out. Does it feel like it opens up that second spot a lot more?
No. Toronto's still talented.
That good? Okay.
Toronto's still talented. Toronto's still a good team, and I don't think Hamilton is. Hamilton showed last year. They spent a ton of money in free agency to bring everybody in, and it just didn't work. And I'm a huge, and will always be a huge Bo Levi Mitchell guy. But I mean, at the same time, he went golfing, and the next day needed a walking boot. I don't know how much of his body is ready for the rigors of a season. And I don't know that Hamilton has an answer if Bo Levi Mitchell's not the Bo Levi Mitchell they're paying for. I think if they're not, I wonder about the longevity of his career. I'm kind of surprised, quite frankly, that it's still going on. But I mean, who knows? This year he could come out and throw for 6,000 yards and make me look like a moron. I'm fine with that too. I'd be perfectly okay with him being ultimately successful. And we're going to see what Bo Levi Mitchell has here week 1 in Calgary when we get through the preseason. The first game for both of those teams is here at McMahon.
It feels to me a little like WWE, WCW, kind of like this season. It's kind of the last, like you bring in the guy for the pop, right? Like we got to okay, we're bringing back McLeod one more time. Okay, we're rolling back. We got Trevor Harris coming back. We got Mazzoli. Like I feel like it could be 0 for 4, right, on these, very honestly. And then, the next year, we've tried this, and then we really, maybe it's a down year next year while we try to redevelop some of this stuff. But this feels like kind of the last hurrah here. We're like, Trevor Harris, I mean, this is it. Like, Bo Levi, like, it's either you're going or you're not. And I don't know if any of them can go.
No, and that's part of the problem is we don't really have that. All of these guys kind of look at guys like Henry Burris and Anthony Calvillo, guys that played until their late 30s, as kind of this benchmark. But those guys are outliers. Like when you look at careers, they don't extend that long typically. And again, most of the guys you mentioned are behind suspect offensive lines. There's not, the Elks are not good on the line. The Sask was not good on the line last year. Now, again, I think they brought in Hardrick too, right? That was the other guy they brought in. So those are great players. And so I think their offensive line is better than the one in Edmonton. But I mean, Bo didn't play last year because he got beat up. He got run over and over again, and he ended up getting injured on a short yardage situation of all things. So I think it's just, I agree with you. I think there's another generation of talent coming. It's very much if we want to go deep into our WCW, WWE days, this is when Hogan and Macho are running around WCW still winning the ratings war, and it's about to flip on its head with, the guys coming up behind are establishing themselves as stars, and we'll see how fast that torch gets passed.
Last thing here today, Winnipeg preseason game this weekend, right? I think that they're playing a lot of their people, and presumed as much. But like, what are you looking for out of this one coming into the weekend?
Well, they are taking a lot of the offense with them.
Okay.
They are not taking a lot of the defense. Vaughters, Rose, Hauser are all staying home on the D-line because they have an opening on D-line. So you got to get those guys as many reps as you can against a good offensive line in Winnipeg. So you get the D-line as much as you can. There's Judge and Awe are both staying home as well. So we'll see what linebackers are able to bring. The defensive secondary is pretty, there's some vets in there, but they're all vying for spots. So we'll see what they're looking at. But I think for me, the big question is the battle on the outside between Brooks and Eccles, to see which of them really kind of steps in and makes their mark at the wide side, because you need to see who of them will be the first candidate at replacing Malik Henry. Jake is going out there. Jake's starting according to the depth chart. They did leave Tommy Stevens at home and did say he will be on the roster week 1. So there's one other quarterback spot on the roster, and there's 3 guys that are currently in camp fighting for it. I think that Schultz is going to be the backup, but I think you've got Logan Bonner and Van Treese. Those are the 2 guys that are fighting for that practice roster spot. And both of them looked really good against BC, I thought, in their opportunities. Logan Bonner has got some zip on the ball, and so does Van Treese. Those things come out low and hard and fast. We'll see. It's gonna be very interesting. Some roster construction down the roster in some of these spots.
Well, Ryan, I appreciate it here, getting back in and all of this stuff. We'll figure out CFL coverage going in through the season, but I appreciate your time today, and hopefully we can have you back on here.
Yeah, anytime, man. All you have to do is reach out, and I'll try not to show up from my car.
No, I appreciate it, man. Take care. Huge special thanks to both of our guests today. The Professor Andrew Murray, always taking lots of time to come on. We do the weekly Monday or Tuesday UFL recap shows, talk football on there. We do attendance and all of that, but I like doing the deep dive today, kind of, getting the UFL set for season 2, avoiding the drop, the survival guide and all of that. I know a lot of homework and prep work was done by Andy, so I really appreciate that, all the time he's spent on this podcast, and not only just this season of the UFL, but really here for the last couple of years, all the way back to the USFL kickoff in Birmingham. Certainly appreciate that. And then Ryan Ballantine as well, coming on 3 Down Nation. We do have some friends over there. Appreciate Ryan taking time, as always. Wealth of knowledge, talking to Stampeders and everything else heading into the CFL season. Quick programming note, I would look for some sort of live CFL pregame show next week. Thursday, June 6th is the kickoff. What is it? Montreal at Winnipeg. Should be exciting. I need to figure that out now. I need to kind of get my ducks in order with that. I think Andy had talked about wanting to come on. We'll see if Hussey and then potentially Evan. I know some of the guys over at Cliffy and Tim with the Alouettes Fight Tech podcast, they talked about maybe doing something. So I'll figure that out. And then not quite sure what we'll do on Friday, the 7th. We've kind of done the UFL playoff previews. Maybe we can get a John Lewis or something on. We can do kind of Q&A here heading into the end of the season. I'll figure it out, but look for live CFL content here Thursday, June 6th before that game. And then the 7th, we'll figure it out. But TBD, we'll post. Everything will be on next week. So just follow us on Twitter, whatever. Be subscribed on YouTube. I'll post updates on there as well. So, and also, as we now go through our 3,500 subscriber giveaway, keep in mind here, I think we're going to do 2 free UFL season ticket packages when we hit 4,000. So if you get that, spoiler, you get us up to 4,000 a year before the next UFL season. We got a year. 2 free season ticket packages. Doesn't matter what city you're in. We'll figure that out. As you'll see with our UFL championship tickets today, spared no expense. Got the best tickets available for Andy and the 2 lucky winners here. They're going to be a part of that. So get us up to 4,000. Like and subscribe. Become a member. You can also join the channel as well as being subscribed. It's 99 cents a month. Spoiler, shipping on all these jerseys isn't cheap or free. The UFL championship tickets, it adds up here. The YouTube ads don't do a lot to offset all that. So like and subscribe, share the video. That's number one, your best way to kind of help support the channel. But then, 99 cents a month, click that join button, and that would certainly, help in the slightest way offset some of this stuff. But all right, here we go. As a reminder, we have our 4 jerseys here, courtesy of Royal Retros. I have them off. And then we have our UFL championship game tickets, 2 free ones, sitting with the professor Andrew Murray here. I've gone through, I've taken everyone that correctly, you always get people that incorrectly submit, but took everyone that correctly submitted for all the different prizes. We have 5 different prize wheels here spinning. I will pull them up one at a time, show the item, we'll spin the wheel. I haven't done any of this, so hopefully, but try to keep this, legit. And if anything goes off the rails here, but we'll do this as fair as we can. Like I said, took the usernames. Everybody, you were supposed to comment on the video, 1 comment per each. If you wanted PJ Walker jersey, you wanted the Jordan Ta'amu jersey, you wanted the tickets, took all those. So here we go. First prize here. Ooh, look at that. Look at production value here. This is for our Cavante Turpin jersey from Royal Retros here. You see number 5, the New Jersey Generals. Here, let me get, I've lost a lot of my screen real estate here, but this is a hot one. Hot item here. I know Mike Mitchell was curious about this. I don't think he submitted. I think there was one person that said that they would donate theirs to Mike. So Mike, hopefully, I think it's Chris said if he won that you would get his winnings. But here we go. We're going to spin the wheel. This is for the Cavante Turpin jersey. And here we go. There we go. Looks like on here. I hope the sound works. At Defending Football, you are the winner of the Cavante Turpin jersey. For all the winners of this, you will email me at the markcastpodcast@gmail.com. For the jerseys, I will need your name, shipping address, and phone number, please. The Markcast Podcast, all one word, @gmail.com, as well as for the championship tickets. Those will send me just your name, email, and all that. We'll correspond because we can electronically deliver those. But for the jerseys, I need your name, email, your name, address, and phone number because they always ask for that. But here you go. Congratulations, Defending Football on that. Keep in mind, only 1 winner per each. So if someone else wins, if you're Defending Football, because some of these people put in for multiple ones. So if you get more than one, then we'll have to have a joker. We'll split a pool cue and you'll have to fight over it. So here we go. Brandon Silvers, AAF legend Brandon Silvers. This is a Seattle Dragons jersey, one of the XFL ones on here. I posted on Twitter. I was curious to see which jerseys got more submissions than others. I think Brandon was near the top, so that's great to see. We will switch over to the Brandon Silvers jersey here. Look at this. Look at this production value here. We are going to, here we go, give away the jersey here. There we go. Scott Stoller, whatever. You see your username at Scott Stoller EU1TG. No, there you go. So email the markcastpodcast@gmail.com. Give me your name, all that kind of stuff, address, phone number, all that, so we can give it to you in case it gets lost. They can track it. Here you go. All right, next one up here. This was one of the hot items here. People really wanted this. PJ Walker, Houston Roughnecks, not quite the same franchise we remember now, but this is a hot one. The sidearm slinger I saw on that. So we are going to pull up the PJ Walker one on here. See a lot of submissions for this one. All right, here we go. And this plays way better if you're watching the YouTube than listening to the audio. What is that? John B. Jenkins. There you go. John B. Jenkins. If you are Johnny B wanting to get this jersey, there you go. Send your stuff to markcastpodcast@gmail.com. And I think this was the most popular one. This is the white Jordan Ta'amu jersey here. Battlehawks legend. Now DC Defenders. Not quite as much success this season, but here we go. We got the Jordan Ta'amu one on here. Let's get this pulled up. And then we also have our championship tickets as well. So let's get the Jordan Ta'amu one up here. All right, here we go. And this is all live, so hopefully this all plays okay on here. But I thought this was the most fair way to do it. Here we go. Kevin Cottrell, 4129. There you go, buddy. And I randomized all the names going in and all this stuff. This is literally as fair as we could possibly do it. Really appreciate that. And now here is for the grand prize, which obviously not as many submissions just because people getting to St. Louis. But this is like row M, your right 50-yard line, right up from the XFL bench. We got 3 tickets. You'll be with the Professor Andrew Murray. We'll electronically transfer all these. You should be good to go. I'm going to be in the press box, or trying to be, credentials open today, but trying to be there just to save some money. So we will get our UFL championship tickets here. And here is the big spin. Here we go. There you go. Bond Wolf 1890. There you go. You are the winner. So send me an email, themarcastpodcast@gmail.com. We'll get it all up on there. And there we go. What do you think? Our big 3,500 subscriber giveaway. I appreciate Dustin over at Royal Retros for sending those over. Have been in my box for quite some time, ready to give those away. And then the UFL championship tickets. We never have to talk about it again. That's really exciting. So like I said, like, subscribe, share the video. That's the easiest, cheapest way you can help support the channel. It doesn't cost a penny, just 2 seconds of your time. But then consider joining the channel, 99 cents a month. Give us a little support. You get little icons by your name, emojis. It's a whole thing. But appreciate everyone getting to this point. I think we put a lot of work into good, original, thoughtful content on here, unlike some of the all football channels floating around these scapes. So really appreciate it. A lot of work goes into this. And so anyone that enjoys or gets a chuckle or finds information on any of this, I appreciate it. Like I said, we'll see you next week. A live CFL show probably on Thursday, and then we'll figure out stuff for Friday as well. Thank you guys all again. Have a great weekend and take care.